Welcome back to another episode of TA Outdoors, and you join me here in the woods where I'm now digging another hole. No ordinary hole though, this is my attempt at a foxhole. So for those that don't know, a foxhole is kind of an emergency shelter, defensive fighting position that was used during the end of kind of World War I and World War II. But my inspiration for this is, I've always kind of been into the kind of World War II, World War I history. It's part of British history, and as you guys know in my channel, I do have a bit of a passion for history with the Vikings, Saxons, Celts, and all the structures I've built that way. But I've not really done too much on World War II, except my bunker renovation in the back garden of my house. If you haven't seen that already, that is, I'll put a link up in the description up here, but essentially it was an old air raid shelter that wasn't really used, and I decided to renovate it. So that was kind of the only stuff I did World War II based on my channel. And yeah, I've gained massive inspiration. I've recently been watching for like the billionth time Band of Brothers, which is a really good series. If you haven't seen it, it's probably one of the best wartime series that I've certainly seen. And they have obviously foxholes in that. It's World War II based. The Battle of Bastogne is obviously one of the famous ones with Easy Company. Their foxholes in that were a bit more simple, and they're still there to this day, but they were a bit more simple and round as well. Whereas this is kind of going to be a little bit more elaborate than those. But essentially there's three levels. There's just the step here, there's another platform here, and then there's a bit more of a pit at the back here. Despite the fact that foxholes kind of came in all different shapes and sizes, a lot of the time they were put up really quickly because they were under enemy fire. So naturally some were totally different and some were more elaborate. A lot of them tend to be about 4 to 5 feet deep, depending on obviously the height of the man, and 2 to 3 feet wide. Mine's probably about 3 feet wide. They did have a small area as a parapet, which I guess was created from the spoil of the sides of all the dirt and the sand, like I dug up here. I'm going to reuse all of that, and I've not made it yet, but essentially they had a flatter area around the edge of the foxhole where you could rest your elbows where you're holding your gun or your rifle, and I guess you could lean it on top of the spoil as well. So that was quite interesting. I'm going to try and incorporate that into the shelter. They also had logs going across the top of some of them to act as a form of shelter when the weather gets bad and when there's mortar rounds and things coming in. Also with sandbags as reinforcements around the edge. So we've gained some good inspiration, and I'm feeling really excited about this. It's something totally different that I've not really done on my channel before. And for those of you guys out there who like your World War I, World War II stuff, get ready, strap yourselves in, because this is not going to be the only video that I do based on that era. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. We're approaching 2 million subscribers. If you're not subscribed already and you enjoy this type of content, please do hit the subscribe button. But also, I'm still going to be doing my other bushcraft and camping and things like that, but I want to create something that is part of history and very much part of British history. So let's crack on, let's keep digging. It's been 4 hours worth of digging so far, and there's plenty more to go. So I'm not using historically correct tools for the time, but I am using fairly old school tools. So this is a 1965 entrenching tool, which has your spade end there, and then this spring catch here, which you press, which is fairly awkward, but now I've been using it a lot, it's a bit easier. So that you can get it at 90 degrees, and then you can use it a bit more like a hoe. And then at the same time, you also have the pickaxe on the back, which locks into place. And that's been really useful because the ground here is horrendous to dig. It's gravel, so it's really not very nice. But that pickaxe section is really handy. And obviously you can use the pickaxe on its own if you want to balance the weight out a bit more, make it lighter. But yeah, it's to be honest, for the era, obviously it's really heavy, but I've never really used it, and it was in quite good nick, and I was debating whether to use it or not, and whether to actually just keep it as a relic almost, you know, like more of a collectible. But these tools were made well back then. All the tools in that era were made a lot better than some cheap things now, so I figured it's going to hold up to the task, and it has. But it's a lot of digging with a small little spade like that, or entrenching tool. But so far that's all the gear I've used. I hope down the line to get more World War II replica stuff and actually bring it out here, do a camp, do an overnight, maybe do a few nights in the Foxhole, and just experience, well, I'm experiencing now how tricky and how hard it is, how physically demanding it is digging a pit like this. And I couldn't imagine doing it whilst under fire and the pandemonium around you of what's happening with mortar rounds coming in, machine gun noise, snipers, all sorts. It must have been very, very tough. And if you watch Band of Brothers, I think they do a really good example, kind of demonstration of what it must have been like, because they interview the guys who were there, and that's what's great about Band of Brothers. So check it out if you've not watched it. And those of you who have watched it, Battle of Bastogne is probably one of my favourite episodes. I think it's 6 or 7. Anyway, let's crack on. Obviously it's sand, mostly sand here. Once we get through that soil layer and the peat layer, that's the sand there. And that's when it's lovely to dig. The majority of the time, I'm actually trying to dig through that with an entrenching tool, and it's not fun. It's not enjoyable. But yeah, this is me set up down here now. I'm in the deep pit, and there's the entrance behind me. So, little update for you. What I've built is, in the main pit down here, I've done basically a sump hole just going parallel to the shelter. That way when the rain falls, which it will, and it comes down, it can puddle here. That's kind of fine. I can dig another trench maybe along there, but I figured if I'm walking along this bit, I don't want to roll my ankle on it. And then it will roll down into the deepest part because it's all on a slope going that way. And then the water can collect in that sump trench. And I've patted it down hard just to try and keep it reinforced. But essentially, that will stop it puddling here. Otherwise, if I was sitting down, then my boots would be in the water. And a lot of the time, especially World War I, that's how they got trench foot, was just by sitting down, you know, in these trenches and walking, and they would just fill with water. So, got the sump hole. Then I built a raised bed, and I just made this section over here, which I'll show you. So this is the raised bed. It is, I don't know, maybe 2.5 inches off the ground by putting a log that end horizontally. And then this end I just made this little raised platform. Made a simple kind of square notch there, lashed it to some vertical uprights, and that's really rigid. And that's now parallel with the log at the other end, so this is a flat surface. So what this means is that as well as use it as a bed, where I'd be totally covered by the roof of the shelter, I could also use it as a bench, because my legs can go here and they're pretty much at a right angle, so it's nice and comfortable. So I guess if there was enemy fire or I needed to be alert and awake, I could be on this bench and I can get up really quickly. And then obviously if needed to get a few hours kip through the night or the day, then I've got the bed as well. So it's a bed and a bench at the same time. This is why I wanted that 2-step platform. The next stage is I'm just going to secure this in because these are going to roll out otherwise, so I need to put a couple of stakes in that end. And then yeah, the next stage is to work on building a little roof over this section. Okay, so I want to show you where I'm at. The wind started to pick up now, so I'm having to talk a bit louder. But essentially, what I've made is a basic log roof. I've made some supports each side. There's 4 logs involved. They are 2 logs thickness on the width. They're secured in with stakes and they're lashed together and pulled tight. That's just going to keep all this super rigid. But obviously, if it rains, it's still going to go straight through. And if this was World War II, I'm guessing if any mortar rounds or anything like that hit nearby, this would splinter and smash really easily, especially if one landed directly on top. So I've got all this spoil around the edge of the foxhole, and I'm thinking I brought with me a couple of sandbag sacks. And from the pictures that I've looked at from World War II foxholes that inspired me to do this, many of them did have sandbags for reinforcement and added protection. And it makes sense because they've dug up all that soil. They might as well utilize some of it. You know, if I put that soil straight on top of here, it's going to fall straight through. It's not really going to waterproof it very well or protect it very well. But if you put it into sacks and things like that and keep it all compressed, which keeps it together, it will certainly make it more waterproof and more rigid. So I've got with me, I don't know, I think 15 of these. I might need a bit more. But I'm going to just fill these up and yeah, just secure the roof. I've left a bit of a gap at the back for some airflow, but I might backfill it in a bit more, I don't know. Had a nice ploughman's lunch. Not full ploughman's, didn't have the pickle though. Okay, so out of sandbags at the moment. Got some, going to give you some in the next episode. And essentially round off here, backfill in here a bit, sandbag the back, and also do the same round here on this side. You can see I've already started, but just rounding that edge off with sandbags. I'm not going to put an extra layer on top of this. I just feel it's going to be too much weight. I may have to put middle support in here. They're not sagging too much because they're quite thick diameter logs, so there's not really much pressure there. But I may just for added security. I'm pleased I can sit under here. Yeah, I might have to crouch a bit, but I can still sit up. And obviously lying down, there's no gaps whatsoever. Bit of bark there. Well, that's it. I'm going to round it off for this episode. I do appreciate you guys. Whoops. Stay. Bad spade. I'm going to wrap it up here. This has taken, I mean, so far this has taken, I think 10 hours, 9.5 to 10 hours to build. I did reuse some of the wood, for example, for this bed on the previous bushcraft shelter that was here. So that meant less sawing, but everything else was pretty much little hand saw, a bit of an axe, and most of the work was done with a 1965 entrenching tool, which has been put to good use and clearly can take an absolute battering. So just that little entrenching tool dug this entire pit. So it goes to show that you can do this kind of thing with fairly minimal tools. Yeah, I'm really pleased with it. It's pretty much how I pictured it in my mind. Like I say, I've just got to finish the outside of the sandbags, backfill it. There's a few more things I want to do to the inside, but you're gonna have to wait to the next episode for that, because that will be the next episode that goes up on the channel. But it's not just going to be me dressed like this. Hopefully I'm going to have some authentic, real World War II clothing, uniform, gear, as best I can. It's going to be as authentic as I can make it. It's not cheap, it's quite hard to find, but I've managed to scour eBay and find some absolute gems of British military World War II gear. So keep an eye out for next week, folks. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you then.